Hey guys, and welcome to part 3 of the children's book series. I'm excited for this video because we're going to get into thumbnailing. And thumbnailing is a really important part to putting this story together. It's actually probably the most important part because after this it's just refining illustrations and finalizing everything. So thumbnailing is where you make all the decisions about how you visually want to tell the story. So there's going to be a lot of rough sketches, a lot of changing and rearranging of the illustrations. So if you guys remember from our first video, our story starts on page 4, and I'm using pages 4 and 5 for one illustration across the entire spread. Obviously this is a sped up video. I am still working rather quickly, but this is not real time. The key to this is not being super detailed with your quick thumbnails. You're trying to lay down your ideas efficiently, but also understanding that what you put down first may not be the best idea, so you got to go back and think about it. You know, is this the best way to tell this part of the story? What if I told it this way, and come up with, maybe a few different options. And I'm going to take you through a bit of my process in going through that. So right off the bat, when we turn to page 6, that's going to be like an action point, where when you have like something that's happening in the story that involves action, it's best to do it on a page turn rather from page to page on the same spread. This just adds a little extra like excitement or, surprise in the book. So you set it up on the spread and then deliver it on the page turn. Okay, so let me lay out what we're working with on this spread. So she smells smoke, and then her main action, which is she's outrunning a brush fire, and it's the sudden action. This is the page turn that we're doing. And so then we go into describing her appearance after this, as well as, her reaction to her new appearance. So this all has to stay within this one spread. And if you're wondering why, it's because in the last video we already assigned each spread the right amount of text in order to keep this story within the right amount of pages that we're using. So this is where we have to stick to this, or we're going to go over our page count. I mean, I won't set in stone that you have to stick to it. You can go back and rearrange things, but again, you're going to deal with moving things around to get it to still fit within the page count. So right now, let's go ahead and just narrow in on what we're working with. And so 3 and 4 kind of go together. You don't have to separate those. So really we have 3 different things that we're working with. And off the bat, I think I'm just going to ignore a few things, starting with the fact that she smelled smoke. I'm going to save that and just focus on she's outrunning the brush fire, and then her appearance on the next page. So these 2 things can go together because I can literally just illustrate that she appears dirty. So that just goes together automatically. We have 2 points that we're focusing. Great, that seems a lot more manageable. Now, how do we want to show this? I kind of went back to putting in an illustration of her smelling the smoke as a spot illustration in the corner, and then an illustration of her running away. But I didn't really like how that looked, so in the end I went back and put it into another spot. So 2 spots to handle that first page, and then the illustration of her appearance on the single page on the right. This probably wasn't the best solution, but I was going to keep it, hold on to this idea, using spots to solve this. So we're going to put it aside because we're working digitally, and we can do that because we have layers. And we're going to try again. What else could we do to solve this visually? So let's just completely knock out that she smelled smoke. We don't have to illustrate that. It's just in the text. So let's focus on the action of her outrunning the brush fire and her appearance afterwards. And I like this approach better because it gives more space to the action illustration for that page turn. If we went with the spots, there would be less impact, I think. So this definitely works better. Also, when I was editing this video and watching this footage back, I did this little doodle of the mice that are in the story, and they're like passed out because they were just running from the brush fire. And I don't know where I lost that in the illustrations, but they didn't appear in the final, and I regret that terribly. I think it would have been funny. I do have them placed throughout the book as sort of like side storytelling. And I don't know why in this one illustration I just left them off. I should have put them in. It's my regret. It's one of my regrets, not putting those mice in. So because I actually have the book now, I figured it'd be nice to just insert what I'm actually talking about, like the final illustration for you guys to see. So you'll notice that the major difference with this final illustration versus the thumbnail is that I give you guys a sneak peek of the fire and the action to come on the first page instead of just nothing. And that way when we go and do the page turn, we go back to that action that we're setting up. So there it is, there's the action, they're running away from the brush fire. And then we have the single page illustration of after she escapes the fire. One thing I've learned from doing thumbnails is that if you get stuck on an illustration and you can't really figure it out, it's best to just do what seems most obvious and basic and just move on. You're going to be going through this entire book, and if you get stuck on page like 8 or 9 and you don't get past that because you want to come up with like the best solution, it's really just going to slow the whole process down, because right off the bat you're not going to know the right solution for every single page. And so it's best to just, move on and then come back to it later. You'll see me do like a lot of very basic sketches really fast and just leave it there. And you'll notice if you look at the actual book that I went back and I changed a lot of things and I came up with a better solution or a different solution. You don't want to stay stuck on one illustration at this very beginning stages of thumbnailing. You honestly have anywhere from like 32 pages to, in my case, 39 pages of illustrations you have to get through. There's no time to be stuck on one. And that doesn't mean like don't go back and try to make it better later. It's just you need to get through everything. Thumbnail every single page in maybe your first pass, and then go back and then start thinking about different solutions. And that's why doing this portion digitally, even if you were doing like a fully traditional like illustrated book, like this part can be done digitally because it's just faster, and you can like move pages around quickly, move ideas around, go back to an idea very, very efficiently. Here I'm just like making different illustrations that would potentially go on this page and then just moving them off to the side as an idea. And I can always move them back and come back to them if I want to go that route again. And make little notes, so for clarity, for your own clarity. If, your little sketches are chicken scratch to you tomorrow, it's not very helpful. So if you feel like maybe I should just write a little note so I remember this chicken scratch here means there's a bed of flowers and not just nothing. That's helpful. Now, I don't share the thumbnails with my client. This is just for me. I don't necessarily think you have to share thumbnails with your clients. I've never worked for a professional like publisher in any capacity, so I've always worked with like self-publishing authors. So I can't be a spokesperson to how that's supposed to work. In my own experience, I don't share the thumbnails. It just doesn't seem like an efficient use of time. They're gonna see all these like rough sketches and have so many changes, so many questions, that it's just gonna delay the project in general, because this is just for you. So if you remember from the first video, I mentioned these two particular pages about the mountain lion interaction that were probably going to require some spot illustrations because there was a lot going on, but I also needed to continue to monitor my page count. And so I was hoping I could get these on one spread. However, it turned out that I needed at least 3 pages to get through this entire interaction properly. I did use spot illustrations, but I started page 20 with a single page showing that action, and it happens on a page turn. So it turns from page 19 over to the action on page 20. And so that's good. That's what we want. And then I used spot illustrations to kind of condense some of the actions that were happening, and then finished it off on page 22 with the final interaction between the mountain lion and Bella, which is also supposed to be Bella's lowest point in the story before she picks herself back up and continues on. So definitely an interaction that was worth 3 pages. A very important part of the story that leads to her turning point. So yeah. So I hope this was helpful behind the scenes work if you're an illustrator trying to figure out how do you go from manuscript to illustrations, or if you're an author who wants to know what your illustrator should be doing or what you're paying for. They should be doing something like this. They should be thumbnailing. You should not be hiring them just to read a sentence and draw a pretty picture done. It's a lot more than that. And I've said this before in a previous thumbnailing video I've done. If you want to go dig that up, you can and listen to me rant. But we are going to go ahead and wrap this video up now. Here are all the thumbnails that I did. I did manage to get through the entire book. Like I said, this is probably still going to go through a few tweaks before I finalize anything. But for now, we are moving on, and next time we are going to be refining some sketches and doing some final color work. So if you are interested in seeing all of that, please subscribe. And if you would like to pick up a copy of Cinderbella, it is linked in the description. Alright guys, I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.